before I waste any more time, why don't we just jump to our panelists and introduce them? We'll start from my left-hand corner down with Jeffrey Miller. Just where you're from, what you're doing, life in New Orleans.
Cool. Jeffrey Miller, trombone player, singer, composer, arranger, all that good stuff. Um, I'm in New Orleans right now. I live in New York, but I'm back home for a minute. Um, and yeah, happy to be here. Is that everything? Or
Sure, yeah.
sure, yeah, yeah,
uh,
cool.
TJ, you're next.
All right. So, can you guys hear me?
Mhm.
All right, great. TJ Norris, trombonist, bassist, singer, arranger, producer, the whole gauntlet, I guess. Originally from Jacksonville, Florida, but have been in the New Orleans scene now for about 5 or so years, and honestly, it is really second to none. But we'll get into all of that.
Thank you. Ricio, you're next.
What's going on, everybody? Ricio Fruge, also from Jacksonville, Florida. I live in New Orleans now. This is going on almost my 10th year, and I went to Florida State and Michigan State University, and I am a member of the New Orleans Jazz Orchestra, and I run a YouTube channel, The Trumpet Studio, that deals with all the cool things about trumpet, from anyone who's a day one trumpet player to like the OGs, vets in the game. I like make stuff for them to like have a place to go and talk trumpet and talk about fun stuff that we do. And yeah, we can talk more about who I am and what I do a little bit later. But yeah, that's me.
Sorry. John, you're next.
Hey guys, my name is John Michael Bradford. I'm a trumpet player, singer, writer, ranger, all those things. From New Orleans, Louisiana, and I'm back home since the pandemic. I was living in LA for almost a year after graduating from Berklee College of Music. Yeah, it was a great school. I got to study with Sean Jones and a lot of other great teachers. I actually found out about Denis Wick through a friend of mine, Farnell Newton. But even before him, years ago, I played this little cornet, and someone gave me a Denis Wick mouthpiece, and it was gold plated, and I was like, "Oh, Denis Wick's so cool." And then Jeffrey was an artist, so it's great to be here with you guys. Yeah, I just been teaching a little bit, doing some gigs around town, whatever is available right now, and making music from home, doing trumpet stacks for people, writing, arranging, and recording, just producing some of my own music. So glad to be here with you guys.
Thanks, John. And I apologize. Your name was in my folder, and I didn't realize that it had not included you until Jeffrey let me know that I had not sent you a link. So thank you for being here. I'm really excited to meet you and get to know a little bit more about what's
Yeah, of
what's going on
course.
with you.
Thank you.
So I think if I listened correctly, I think Jeffrey is the only one originally from New Orleans, right?
John Michael and I are both from.
Oh, okay, John Michael. Okay.
Yeah.
So for those of you who are transplants, what made you move to New Orleans? TJ, you're laughing. Go ahead.
So I had like originally planned on moving to Atlanta. So I finished up grad school at Florida State and was like, yeah, I'm gonna move up there. And I started to reach out to some of my contacts in Atlanta, but I wanted to be very clear that I was not moving to Atlanta to be a bass player. Like, because everyone was like, yeah, nah, bro, you can, such and such is going to be on tour. They're going to need a sub for all of their gigs. And there's some auditions coming up for bass. And I was like, that's cool, but I just spent 6 years in school studying jazz trombone. So I don't want to just do that, just playing bass. And I had visited New Orleans during my undergraduate at Florida A&M, and just like I really fell in love with the city, but it kind of, slipped. I guess it fell off my radar once I got into grad school. But I just remember literally a a memory popping back up in my head of walking down the street and hearing a good friend of mine, Wes Anderson the fourth, playing trombone, and I was like, "Yo, that sounds like Quad." And I walked up, and it was him, and we had this whole big moment. He was like, "Bro, come sit in and play," and I didn't have my horn. He was like, "So what? Come on, like you gonna we gonna figure it out." Like, and it was just love of that, and I realized, you know what, this is probably where I need to be. It's going to also pull on me in the other areas that I didn't get a lot of study in, within jazz academia. It's like I'm going to be here where it started. This is the place for me. And I mean that's just how it happened. Yeah.
Yeah. So I am good friends with Barry Stevenson and Jameson Ross. And they're like, they had moved here around 2 years before I got here. They started school at UNO, at University of New Orleans. And Barry called me to do a recording session for his one of his early records. And I was like, once I got here, like was walking around and able to like see the city and see how many great trumpet players there were in the city, I was like, man, I have to find a way to get here. And I was in the grad school at that time. So I was like coming from East Lansing, Michigan. I was like trying to figure out if I want to move to LA or to move to Atlanta or, the usual suspects. And hearing like the amount of amazing trumpet that was being played around the city. And I didn't really know a lot of the players at that time. And I was like, I have to come like see what this is about, learn about what's going on the streets here and like figure out what the essence of the music is that like, I don't think many people see outside of the city limits. There's a lot of things that there are a lot of parts that people see, but being on the streets and seeing all the different festivals and different players that you can hear in one day. Like, I think I heard 15 trumpet players that day. And I was like, yo, like any of these cats could be one of the best cats I've ever heard. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I know all of them now. Like, you know what I'm saying? I remember specifically Chris Cotton was one of the cats I heard playing at the festival. I was like, who is that? The guy sounds like Clifford Brown meets Trombone Shorty. I was like, who is this guy? You know what I'm saying? And so like, that happened so many times. I'm like, if there was going to be a place that I can go and learn, soak up information and present it, you know what I'm saying, in some way, respectfully to like the natives, like I want to go there, be respectfully, try to integrate into that scene. And I didn't really have a safety net, like a school. Like a lot of people come here and go to school. Like I came here. You know what I'm saying? Like I showed up. Yeah, that's how I ended up moving down here and been here almost 10 years. I keep saying almost 10 years. I'm like, is it 8, 9, or 10? I can't remember one of those. 8, 9, or 10.
Yeah. Hold on to that thought about what it was like when you first moved there without any help. I'm going to quickly, we've got an attendee here that is friends with Jeffrey, and I'm going to promote him to a panelist.
He's friends with all of us. He's the godfather.
You know what? I'm just going to assume everybody knows everybody from now on.
Damn near.
There we go.
Might as well. Hi,
Ashland.
All right. Hello, everyone.
Welcome.
We all got
Thank
purple
you.
going on.
hey,
Prince.
come on.
My next question was to actually the guys that grew up in New Orleans. You know those social media grid pictures or the memes where it's like, this is what my friends think I do, this is what my parents think I do. So associate that with New Orleans. What do you think like people who don't grow up there think New Orleans music scene is all about? And is it what you think is that reality, or like what is it to you versus what like you think it is to transplants when they first get there?
John, you want to take it or?
I can go first.
Right, go ahead.
It's kind of like when people always like come to you and they're, they ask you where you're from. You say New Orleans, and they're like, "Oh, so you must eat gumbo. You must like this, or you must hang out with alligators and all that stuff." It's like the same thing. I mean, there is I would say a fairy taleness to it. I mean, you come here and you're just embraced. Like when Mauricio came here, when I met him, I was like, even though he's older than me, I'm like, oh, it's a new guy coming. It's like, my bro, like we're going to play music together. It's going to be great. And that's just kind of how it happens. You start, a lot of people start young, even if you come in starting at a later age, I think, the elders will embrace you if you really are humble and you want to learn the music. And the scene is just, it thrives off of the community. It thrives off of people's, willingness to work together and come together and make great music. And you can learn a lot. There's a lot of people that are willing to teach and give you what they can. And, as long as you're respectful and I think pay your dues, being in the city is one of the best places you can come, even if you don't stay forever. It's always home. Like you always come back and you'll be like, New Orleans is home, even if you're not from here. And it's great having Ashland on here because he could speak to that, of all of us coming together. He started something called the Trumpet Mafia, and it was a way to get all the trumpet players in town to get together and practice. But that's what New Orleans really is, like people coming together, making music, learning together. And developing great things together.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that, because it's like, a lot of people, as soon as they hear, oh, you're from New Orleans, it's like it must be a party all the time over there, right? And it's like, of course, it's a lot of fun, you know what I mean? But especially if you want to be a musician, it definitely requires a lot of work. Like John Michael was saying, you have to pay your dues. You have to kind of put your ego aside to just, to learn the right information, as far as musically and otherwise. And then, then you could afford to have a little fun, right? After you do the work and you learn about what you need to learn about, um, from who you need to learn it from, I think then it'd be cool to, then you could stretch out and really, get down to the fun. Um, and I think especially like when you think about, I feel like a lot of players who haven't spent much time here, they think about second lines and the parades and stuff like that. And playing in the parades, all the musicians that I talk to aren't from here who have always wanted to play New Orleans. They're like, oh, I've always wanted to play, in a second line parade, and it looks like so much fun. And I'm like, it definitely looks like fun, but then you get inside of one and you realize, how long you actually have to play for, the stamina that's required.
Kills your
You know what I
chops.
mean? It kills your chops. You can't, people. Specifically remember talking to friends of mine who always wanted to move to New Orleans and play music, and they're like, "Man, if I could, I'd do a second line every day." And I'm like, um, your chops are gonna not thank you for that. You know what I mean? So it's like you kind of have to, it's a interesting thing to separate the, to look at the fantasy that people have, um, you know, when you have that context of actually living here and being in the scene, on the scene, and all that. It's cool. It's funny.
Yeah, another thing, and my bad, I haven't said anything, but the most famous misconception about New Orleans is there's something worth being seen on Bourbon Street. I've had to be.
Don't listen to the song. Don't listen to Bourbon Street Parade.
Yeah, you sing Bourbon Street Parade enough, and you think that like there's something worth going. No. There's nothing there. I think even Jamil Sharif stopped doing Maison and Bourbon, right? So I mean, that's really the last thing that was happening. But no, that's a really old school thing. The other thing people think is like it's Mardi Gras all year round.
We really be
I
chilling.
mean, it's not. Come on.
Po' boys and king cake and jambalaya.
We really be chilling.
I mean, that's cool. Have a good time, party. But really, the beads though, the beads is just like, all right, come on.
People get off the plane with the beads on, like it's like in November. It's like,
right. In June. You know what I mean? It's like,
June.
Sorry, that's my 2 cents.
That's exactly what I wanted to hear. Thank you.
You could visit Bourbon Street the first time, get it out of your system. But if you keep going back, then you might have a problem that's like deeper than the music could probably fix. You know what I mean? I don't know. That's just my opinion.
Well, if you're a serious musician who wants to kind of break into the scene, I feel like you probably do need to go and hit the, do the what everybody else thinks just to get it out of your system. But once that's over, like what clubs do you go to? How do you break into the scene and start paying your dues?
I mean, one of the clubs that a lot of us played at just closed. You know what I'm saying? Like we are losing places. Things have changed over years since I started when I was like 9 or 10. I'm 24 now, so over all those years, I've seen a lot of things shift and change. I got my start playing in the French Quarter in Jackson Square, and then just progressed and kept going to camps and learning from people. And a lot of music was happening on Frenchman Street. That's usually where you hang out. Other clubs might have, like the Maple Leaf might have a night where there's something happening. Like you might want to check out George Porter Trio. Or, there's certain clubs you want to go to, and those guys will let you sit in and play. But a lot of people kind of cut their teeth on Frenchman. I feel like Spotted Cat is one of the places. Ashland plays there a lot. We've all played there. Across the street from there, Snug Harbor, where the great late Ellis Marsalis was every Friday, and Ashland played every Friday with him too. And just like being around all those guys, Preservation Hall, obviously, But just the fact that all that's still here is a blessing. But there are some places that have closed recently that we don't, get to play in anymore.
Yeah, I was going to say, especially as like a transplant coming, um, all of those things, all of those places he named, really being on Frenchman Street, Preservation Hall, um, when it was open, the prime example, just being around the cast. But I'll say like one of the biggest lessons about moving here specifically that I notice is everyone is almost, I'll say almost everyone is 100% welcoming as long as you, it's like inviting someone to your house and all they do is come in and raid your fridge and then leave, opposed to coming and spending time with you. So if you come in and you're like, you're respectful with it, I mean, this city will open you, I mean, wide, arms wide open. But it's really easy just to kind of see those who just want to come in, get what they think they need, and then dip out on it or use the name, and that's where you have more of the issues. And the reason I say that about New Orleans more than some of the other cities or the main scenes is most of those cities are filled with transplants. I mean, everyone, not everyone. I mean, obviously, I'm being sarcastic, but everyone moves to LA, everyone moves to New York, Chicago, Houston. But here, there are people who born here, raised here, and are keeping the culture moving in a forward direction. And you want to come and pay your dues for lack of a better term. And paying your dues is not just like showing up to someone's gig, paying to get in and then sitting in. It's sometimes, sitting with them afterwards for an hour and a half and they're talking with you and you may be tired, but this may be what you have to do because I guarantee you the information they're going to give you in that moment, you're not going to get anywhere else.
I
Yeah, I
feel
was gonna. Oh, sorry. I was gonna say, yeah, TJ. If anything, if anyone can speak to that, it's definitely TJ because he plays with the Dirty Dozen brass band now, and the one of the founding members of that band, Roger Lewis, is an amazing baritone sax player. We all play in Delphio Marsalis' Uptown Jazz Orchestra together, and you know it was in that band that I feel like Roger was able to hear TJ and hear and also see how serious he was about how professional he was, but also how great of a person he is, and how hard he works, right? And so that's one of those things where I feel like that's a great example of somebody moving to the city, um, obviously looking for opportunity, but doing it in the most genuine way because he cares about music, right? And so um, I don't know, I just that's something that hearing him speak definitely reminded me of that because when he first moved to the city, I was like, yeah, it's gonna be. He moved to the city literally right before maybe a year before I left for Juilliard, I think maybe
Yeah.
2 years, I don't know, but it was cool. It was like all right, cool. It's big homie. He's moving to the city, and it's gonna be great vibes. Um, and so somebody like that who I definitely look up to in terms of how he carries himself, and you know wherever he moves, he tries to move with respect, and you know it's a really cool thing.
Mm.
So now he plays with
Thank you.
Dirty Dozen and tours, and is definitely going about it the right way, I would say. So yeah.
is there a certain amount of time for those of you who are transplants, but do you feel like there's a certain amount of time it takes to get really adjusted into the scene? Or is it one of those things once you're in, you're in, doesn't matter, could take 2 weeks, could take 2 years?
There's well, when it picks back up, I could have on one night I could sit in with 9 different bands, and so depending on my drive and how much I was going out there, I mean, there's always music happening. So, um, and everything's pretty much walkable too. So, I mean, yeah, there's every neighborhood has their own bar with music playing, and then there's strips of music. So you can really walk and sit in. I mean, when I first moved here in 2007, I was here at UNO getting my master's, and a lot of trumpet players were uh, still relocated or everywhere, Houston and New York. And I think it was a little bit different for me because, I had Russell Batiste saw me outside one day with a trumpet in my hand and just gave me 3 dates. And he never even heard me play. He just saw me like a trumpet owner. And he was like, yeah, I need a trumpet owner for this gig, Luckily I ended up doing more than 3. So he liked me, but that was the scarcity of trumpet players was crazy. So maybe after 3 weeks or 4 weeks, I was in 13 bands, or something like that. And I had to dial back. And that was a little different. So if somebody wants to come here now, plenty of trumpet players, I think that, coming here to, as if you're moving to the city, coming here to work, it's just probably the wrong mind frame to come to, it's almost if you're like a Swiss watchmaker. A watchmaker. If you're a watchmaker, if you really like, and then you move to Switzerland just to sell your watches to the Swiss, it's like, well, so maybe there's another conversation you guys could be having. Like maybe you could see what they're doing. Maybe, it's a practice, if you can, how much can you get in? How much can you learn from Swiss watchmaking and maybe even affect a company or something one day and start designing for, so paying dues to me is going to the elders' gigs, putting money in the young kids tip jar, let alone the elders. And making sure that they're okay, making sure that the next generation, to me, I love New Orleans. I'm not from here. I always had a outside perspective, but just like many cities, it's somewhat dysfunctional. You know what I mean? It's beautiful. It's like literally, I like to do an analogy of like, the stuff bubbles from the street. So it's like it's an oil pipeline. And unfortunately, this pipeline has some holes. There's some holes in it. Still rich with oil coming from the elders down to the next generation. And I, in the last 13 years, have basically found my piece of the pie is trying to strengthen the pipeline that's already here. So I'm trying to patch up these holes. The pipeline is still here and pumping, but the problem with the leaking oil is that it's wasted energy on the elders' part, and also information not getting to the next generation. So, that's just where I find my piece of the pie. And I think for anybody that comes here, they should try to figure out, how to work with the city and not against it. I'm lucky that I've never shopped around my demo CD to one club or asked or begged for a gig. I've just came here serving. And now the thing is like, if you want to get calls, it's out of sight, out of mind. So everyone needs to hear you, not hear about you. They need to hear you. So you need to sit in with everybody, If I leave for 3 months, no one calls me when I come back. They don't remember what I sound like. I have to sit in again. And they're like, oh yeah, Ashland, I'm gonna call him, So it's out of sight, out of mind. This is a very, you gotta be here. Jeff, you better come back because people starting to already forget about you, bro.
Don't say that, bro. That's scary.
I'm teasing, bro. You're a legend here.
Good thing I'm out of school.
It almost sounds like it sounds like it's a pilgrimage that you're not going there to have New Orleans do something for you. You're a pilgrim making your way to the holy city. And
absolutely, it's a mecca for jazz musicians, like in the most literal sense. It's a pilgrimage coming down here for many musicians. The problem is they come down and they're like, I'll go back home just to get my bags. So many people that I've hosted came to visit and never came back. never went back.
How does a younger musician who moves to New Orleans start out financially? Because you want to serve, you want to sit in as much as you can, but you got to pay rent. So what do you see a lot of musicians do?
If you have to do that with music, which I wouldn't recommend putting that kind of stress on something you're studying like that, it can get a little, weird. But if you, a lot of people play on the street. That's a whole different.
I was gonna say that.
But also you're dealing with street rules, and that's why I don't play on the street. It's playing on the street.
I can attest to that.
Yeah, so I would, save up, do what you got to do. You're gonna have to do something else to, you can't put that kind of pressure on your art and us. We can't feed everybody, immediately. But if you have something to offer, we'll pay for it. I mean, that's just what it is, So if you're still studying, you're not ready to make a living off of it, So yeah, get a day job. Get a day job.
That's real true. That truth right there. Come on.
Yeah, and there's some beautiful day jobs that you can do here. The most beautiful thing about New Orleans, I'd argue, is not the architecture, the food, or the music. It's the people that created all those things. So just being in the community, it is going to rub off. And hopefully in a good way.
Yeah, I was going to say the way Ashlyn say, like, not putting that stress on your art. I know when I moved here, it was kind of crazy. It was like 9 months before my wedding. We weren't supposed to move here, so it was like, really uprooting. But I had spoken to my professor at Florida State, Nick Finzer, and he was like, "Listen, two things. It's gonna suck, and there's nothing you're gonna be able to do about it." And I was like, "That's not. Come on, bro. Like, I don't need to hear that." And he said, "No, I mean, it doesn't matter where you move." He said, "And you can move with $20,000. There's going to be something, like, you may be good for 2 years, but there's going to be something. It's going to suck, and there's nothing you can do about it. So just get comfortable with being uncomfortable." So I went into, like, when I moved here, I was substitute teaching during the day. And then I'm out all night. And I mean all night till, 3, 4, 5 in the morning. And then I'm subbing again, the next day, just to kind of do what I got to do. But I feel like I wasn't thinking about it the way Ashlyn said, but that is the perfect thing. Because, man, if I had tried to jump in and start working on trombone and trying to, find my way into the scene, either I would have hated it or everyone would have hated me, because it would have immediately turned into a job, for survival, and not in the good way. Not like, hey, I got to get better because I got to survive. Like, not that. Like, okay, I got to do this. I got to move here. I got to do that. Bam, bam, bam. Bills got to be paid. And we're still paying for a wedding. So, it was, it just would have been detrimental.
So my transition or start as a transplant moving into the city was a little bit more hectic than I think some others might have had. And I say that because I didn't attend a university at all in this city. So I didn't have any, like, some of those connections that people usually get from, like, some of the institutions that, they meet some professors, and that's kind of like a community that you're kind of built into, or you're automatically associated with. And I say that because my wife, she went to a university. She's a musician. She's a trombone player. So, like, she, like, navigated the scene the exact opposite way that I did. She was with the community, and so, like, that was her thing. And so, like, our stories are very different from how we got into the scene. I did some substitute teaching like TJ did. I might have told him what company I worked for, probably. And I realized via that there was a void of Black males that worked in the school system. And so I was like, man, like, I would love to find a way to use that and help out people that, like, I feel like having a role model is something that a lot of, like, young Black children, like, look up to or need. And sometimes, so I was like, how can I find a way to do that? And I started teaching at a music program for after school at risk children for about 5 years. And that was a beautiful situation for me because during the day I would be working with some of the youth of New Orleans who were going to be playing trumpet, playing trombone, playing any horn that we offered at the program, and at night playing with their parents' age people, and also with the elders. And so like it was a pipeline that I got to like see a large perspective of what the city was, what the culture is, and have like tremendous respect for what's actually happening. Because I wasn't just on the scene seeing people play. I was also talking to people's children when they're crying about how they haven't eaten since yesterday, or what I'm saying, like, and finding them ways to like subsidize them having some type of meal. Like, those type of things were like me reaching my hand in different ways that like taught me a lot of lessons that I didn't realize how much it would affect me. But it definitely gave me a great appreciation for all the relationships that I did build at those times. And also saw some really crazy stuff because these kids from New Orleans, they see people playing all kinds of trumpet and trombone. So like I'd have kids day one never touched a horn in their life. I give them a horn. I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to tell you what to do yet. I just want to see what you do. I give them the horn. They go, and they'll hit like a C above the staff. And I'm like, you know what? We're going to just work around that. You keep that there. We'll build around. You keep that note. We'll work around it from there.
Mauricio, I never believed until of blood memory until I moved to New Orleans. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I never believed it. I never believed it until I saw. I was able to. I can't say I taught a 5-year-old to scat sing. I allowed them to scat sing for the first time, and they phrasing, they're in the pocket. I was like, what? I'm out. I can't believe it. But at the same time, I do believe it because, when you do a rehearsal in the neighborhood, you leave your door open, kids ride their bike, by, what's going on in there? And, 5 minutes later, they're on the porch looking in. And then 5 minutes later, they're in your house looking at the instruments, It's like, it's like, it's even if you hate music, like it's gonna come down your street one day,
I feel like it's one of the few places, and maybe I'm naive to think this, but it seems to me like it's one of the few places left that there is a strong oral tradition of music being passed down to kids. Like when I was growing up, my mother's from Germany, and she still grew up with a lot of the folk music that was sang over the dinner table and at holidays and some of these really strong traditions. And it just seems like the generation of German kids, like my relatives and stuff, and when I see like a lot of that oral tradition is gone because the older people have passed away. It's not necessarily been passed down. We have recordings, we have, digital music. There's all these other things that have not made the oral tradition necessary. Whereas in New Orleans, it's still alive and well, and these kids are just soaking it up. So like you're saying, that you're just helping them put language to whatever music they're already speaking, and I think that's amazing. Mauricio, was someone going to say something? I didn't want to.
Oh no, I was going to say it's like literally that it's still around, and it doesn't seem like it's going anywhere. I promise you. I mean, all of us play with a lot of different groups, and there's a good chance on almost every gig that there's going to be some song that comes up that none of us have ever seen written down, but everyone in the room knows it. We know how it's supposed to go, the tempo, the vibe, what the trombones are supposed to do right here. It's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
Teaching a New Orleans student, it's like one of the best honors you could ever have. Because they know what they want to sound like. It's just like you're giving, I don't know, an amazing fighter different weapons, showing them all the different, I don't, John Michael, how old were you when we had our first lesson? I never remembered it. Is he there?
He's probably muted.
Unmute.
Oh, sorry. I was probably 14, 15, maybe younger.
And how long have you been?
At least been 10
playing
years.
how long have you been playing on the street in Jackson Square, from there?
These 4 years, 3-4
4
years.
years. 4 years of basically professional exposure, you know.
I remember the first time John Michael and I basically grew up together. I've known him since I think I was in 7th grade, and he was in 6th.
Yeah, I was in 6th grade.
Yeah, and I remember I heard him, and he was playing some Clifford Brown, I think Joyce, the solo on Joyce. I'll never forget it. Either Joyce Springer or Sandu, maybe both. And I was like, what in the world? Like, I just hadn't heard, you know what I mean? It's just like he was playing the stuff that I was attempting to learn, you know what I mean? And so it was like, you know, one of those things where, you know, your friends end up inspiring you to, you know, and driving you and pushing you to learn and, you know, get better and get to another level, right? So it's definitely just coming off of what Ashlyn said, it's like feel like New Orleans, young New Orleans musicians and students just have that different drive about them, especially when they really are serious about music and really love it. And speaking of that, I think one of the attendees on this call is Caleb Summers. He's an amazing trombone player, young cat coming up in New Orleans, and we actually a couple of weeks ago we had the first time we actually had a voice conversation. We sat on the phone for like 30 minutes, and he was just asking me questions about not even about like trombone stuff, just about philosophy and you know, integrity and all that kind of stuff, you know what I mean? And that just like blew me away, and I was just so impressed by that and just so excited about, you know, what he's gonna do with his music, not to put any pressure on him. and the crazy thing is another amazing trombone player, young trombone player from New Orleans coming up, Melvin. He just joined the call, so it's like, you know what I mean. It's like the next generation is definitely in here.
Yeah.
You know, and it's crazy. It's a really exciting thing. It's a really exciting thing.
One of the things that came up on our New York call was, and I think John was mentioning one of the clubs that you used to always play at just closed down. And in New York, Scott Robinson, who's one of our artists, was lamenting that one of the clubs that he played at forever is, you know, quite a number of years is closing down. And we're seeing some of these clubs that are just standards of New York and New Orleans too that are closing because of COVID. And my guess that the answer to this question is yes, New Orleans music will continue being played, but what do you think the effect of some of these club closures will have on how the music is being performed? Do you see, I mean, is the music just going to be there no matter what the stage, or how do you feel like the effect of COVID is going to have? What effect of COVID do you think it's going to have on New Orleans music?
Before they give a deep answer, I just have to say we're not going to be able to properly assess the damage until the smoke clears here. You know, we've lost a lot of people. We've lost a lot of clubs. We've actually lost, you know, some musicians are delivering mail now. You know, who knows, you know, if they'll even go back in you know, as a full-time musician, you know. But I can tell you now, there was a second line. We had a trombone king pass away last week, and you know that people had the second line for him. They knew the risk. You know, and you know, you can't stop the music here. You know, so maybe it will. If there's not enough clubs, you know, we'll play in front of our houses. You know, and that's what we've been kind of doing. You know. All right, somebody say something deep.
I was gonna say that though. I was gonna say that. Yeah, just like the music, we're just gonna keep playing on the street. Like you know what I mean. We're just gonna move. We're gonna make a different stage, different stages. You know what I mean. I feel like that's just gonna be, you know, if the worst comes to the worst. But I have hope.
I think the music scene will face many of the same things that any art field or any music city will face with a return. And that being when is it equitable enough for you to take a gig? How do we return? Is it supposed to be somebody looking out for somebody else type of situation? You know, and so I think in strong music cities, I think based on my talks and chats with other people, I think there's going to be a coming together of community to make certain priorities for ourselves moving forward, so that we can't be as removed from the process of making the business part of this thing work. And I think that's something that's been brewing a long time. And I think major cities or major cultural cities like New Orleans will have a lot more power in making the necessary next steps happen, because this will be the defining moment in how we shift and transition into it being better and more a prolific scene for all of us, and where we have more control. I mean, the entire music industry has changed since the pandemic. Now the music industry has changed. We have to come back to performing, and now we have to realize our actual power and what we have to bring to the table in terms of making sure that we can do what we love. We can also be the storytellers, visionaries, and culture bearers of a region and a town, a city. And from there, place ourselves in the proper place to make decisions that allow us to continue this, because the system was mostly broken in a lot of places before the pandemic. It exposed all of it. Now we have to rebuild, and in rebuilding, we have to just make sure we're at the forefront of it. Our voices are there, and we're not just receiving scraps or handouts. Like, no, we're an essential part of the culture of the world and the country and the cities that we're living in, especially one as culturally rich as New Orleans.
Yeah, bro. That was it.
I said the same thing. I said a similar thing in the New York meeting, I think, where, we have to, people are realizing that in the few gigs that I've done, obviously socially distanced, it's people are just, it's crazy how much people just realize that they miss live music and that they need live music, live entertainment, period. So it's like when things start really getting back together, it's similar to what Ricio said. We have to, hold them accountable and, make them realize, okay, remember when you didn't get to go to live shows again? And remember that feeling that you got when you finally heard 2 notes of somebody playing a horn outside when you've been in your house for, 3 months? Like, remember that feeling when it comes time to, coming back to how life used to be. And just it shows you how necessary music is and live entertainment and what we do is. So I feel like, we just have to get people to remember that.
Yeah. I actually think that, like, the way all three, especially Jeffrey and Ricio, answer the question kind of gives the answer. Like, the music isn't going anywhere, period. But we just have to fix how important it is in people's eyes when they start, revitalizing whatever the scenes are. Like, Jeff, you said the same thing in the New York scene. So I mean, it lets you know it's not going anywhere. It's gonna be here. But the people who are presenting it, let's make sure they're not the ones, getting the bottom of the barrel next go around or whenever we fix this. But yeah, I mean, especially down here, because the music is like in everything. I drop my son off to daycare, and somebody opens their door, their kids, their car door, and I hear the Hot 8 playing, or I hear, Dr. John. It's not going anywhere. And this woman can have on a full suit, can, like she's going into the law office or whatever. But it's just in everybody.
I think a lot, I mean, in a silver lining, the pandemic has really forced our nation to look at how we're supporting everybody. Because I mean, in terms of how many, who was having the hardest time getting good health care when they needed it during COVID? Who was having the hardest time getting financial aid during COVID? And we're seeing, those holes and where people are being supported, how we're supporting people were really magnified in a pretty blaring way during COVID. So yeah, I think as a nation too, it's a similar discussion. Like, now that we've seen, the people who need the help the most, and we've had to make some plans to make sure that everybody gets help. Are we gonna do that after COVID also? I think there was a far more eloquent way of saying that, but what I'm actually saying is I agree with you.
So eloquent. You got it.
So I think Ricio, you had mentioned you're doing some. You've got an online group or social media group, and Ashlyn, you Trumpet Mafia. I wanted to give you guys a couple minutes to talk about stuff, and any other of you who have stuff on the side that you're doing as well. But Ricio, why don't we start with you?
Oh, great, thank you. So yeah, about 2 years ago, year and a half, 2 years ago, I started a YouTube channel called The Trumpet Studio, and I wanted to focus on. I mean, I don't know how to say it better than like I wanted to make the trumpet community cool. Like, so like we had a place to go to watch people.
What are you saying?
Like, I mean, like, but like
Already
more tangibly cool. Yeah, but more tangibly cool in the way of the internet, you know,
Whatever.
like. So like, here's my thing. If I wanted to like have a relaxing but like also like educational night, I wanted to be like, I want to go watch something about trumpet. And I could watch videos of Miles Davis for hours. I could watch videos of Wynton Marsalis for hours. And I was like, oh, well, what if I wanted to talk or see something about Ashlyn Parker, which I say this every time I'm in a room, and I'm not just saying it's to fill his ego. Ashlyn Parker is one of the best trumpet players in the world. Like, find somebody who would check that. So like, I want to know what it's like to be able to go on the internet, go to YouTube or something like that and talk to some of the best players in the world, see what their life is like, what their practice habits are. Like, not just like a lesson where it's all like, you know, suit and tie, you know, it's just like, no, this is a person that we have the means to talk to anybody in the world at any point, really. It's like, how do you get in the door? And so like, what I wanted to basically do is make some like, not to be drumline or corny, but like edutainment. So something that's like educational, has educational stuff there, but also like entertainment, has entertainment value. And so like I see other fields and other areas that sell things, that have performers and people who are the face of something. And they have a lot of this like very like community based, let's talk about this thing. Let's talk about our friend. I can talk about Ashlyn and John Michael and TJ and Jeffrey on my channel and support them. And that does no harm to me. And it helps both of us. Like, and so like that idea is something that I wanted to make sure that I started to like, if I want this in my life, I want to be able to at least start the foundation for it and see where it goes. Because like, I want to be able to like go on the internet and not just on like TikTok or something like it, go in there and see something that's maybe like more educational and not as just entertainment, like play a cover song. So like some of my stuff is about me showing how I would show a A1 trumpet player how to play C major scale. But they can also see me talking about the harmonic analysis of Wynton playing on Cherokee if the different audience need to be should be addressed that day. And so like all of it's there, and there's a playlist for it. And so like if you wanted to click on this line of things to talk about, it's there. And like if that's not your thing, like if you're John and Michael, you do not really need to see how to play a D major scale. You don't need that. But you know, if you wanted to send it to somebody, you could. And so I get there's lots of ways to make this thing work. And I thought my best way is like, hey, I'll start. And so like if John Michael gets a channel, if Ashlyn gets a channel, Jeffrey, TJ, if they get a channel and they start to talk about these things, it makes it all cool again. And like people can compare I'm talking about how I felt about it, what I said about it, to how they felt about it. You know, and they can get our honest opinions and see what our, you know, like our regular life is like as well. You know, so that was my thing. And I wanted to make sure that like community. I don't want to exclude anybody because everything I looked up was like, hey, how do you do this 3-6-2-5 pattern on this certain spot of giants? Or it was, how do you buzz? You know what I'm saying? Like those two things in such a non like this is your big brother, your big cousin talking to you vibe. Like, you know, that's my whole thing. It's kind of like, hey, let's talk.
Yeah.
The
Well,
trumpet
that's great.
studio.
I actually I just subscribed to your page.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate
while you were describing
appreciate
it. So,
it.
the Trumpet Studio, make sure you head over to that YouTube page and check it out. Sounds awesome. Ashlyn, tell us a little about Trumpet Mafia.
Well, I've never heard of this thing. They keep on blaming me for it. But there's no page to follow. There's nothing that we're selling. To see what we're up to.
Mafia, is the first rule of Trumpet Mafia that there is no Trumpet Mafia?
To see what we're up to is like seeing what the members are up to, you know? what Ricio's up to, what Jeffrey's up to. Everyone here probably has a shirt. I think except for TJ. I'm sorry, TJ, you don't have one. But no, the shirts. Our friend Chris Butcher was in Havana last year or the year before, and heard this killing jazz trumpet player from the street and went into the club, went upstairs, and it's a dude with a Trumpet Mafia shirt. So there's shirts all around, Brazil and Russia and Japan and Germany. I think the most per capita is in Western Australia. for some reason, we sold a lot of shirts there. I usually don't sell them. I just put them on trumpet players that I want them on. So you kind of have to know me and get a shirt, and that's all. There's nothing you have to do. You can just hashtag Trumpet Mafia right now. So it's just it started as a practice group, and my goal is to get a little bit more organized virtually, so that we can possibly have open Zoom rooms that everyone's always practicing. There's sorry, low battery. Right. Try to get the hang happening virtually. These guys like to play video games, and when they're playing video games online, they're actually they're like trading with each other, so we want to try to make it fun, try to maybe gamify the whole thing. One thing is, I really love to get some social. These trumpet players don't know each other. I would love for the reconnaissance to be a little bit easier. It's kind of hard to know who to follow and blah blah blah. So we're gonna have like a different little hierarchy to our social media kind of thing, so just look out for maybe a game or an app coming out soon, but it's gonna be fun.
Ashland makes tests fun again.
That's pretty awesome. I like the idea of that community is so important, and to like have that kind of just slowly to see your reach kind of just in a very tangible way slowly move across the world. It's great. That's the main reason I created the Denis Wick app. I have no coding background or anything, but every year I'd go to these trade shows and hang out with you guys, amazing musicians, and we'd talk product, we'd talk brass playing. I'm a trumpet player, so I loved, kind of learning a little bit more every single year. And I thought, wouldn't it be great if I could just put all of this into one interactive place that everybody could do, or everybody could be a part of, everybody could see what I'm seeing. And that's why the Denis Wick app came out, because when you look for quality groups to be a part of or quality information, there is too much information out there. It's just hard to find. I just can't believe how many, junior hires recording their practice session are getting these ridiculous followings. And some of my artists who post a video can't get more than 20 likes, And so, having a focal point where, like what you're doing, Ricio and Ashland with your group, that's, will get a more focal point on social media at some point, or virtual point at some point. It's so important, because I think the more places that can concentrate really quality information, quality community, the better for our music communities. Is there any other like groups that any of you have started or that you're a part of that has been really instrumental to you?
I'm sorry, while they're thinking about it, I wanted to make sure to mention what Ashton was talking about. One of the ways that I saw that as an issue, I tried to address on the channel, which is I made a series called 10 Trumpet Players You Should Know. Very strategically, not saying 10 best, not the, I was like 10 people you should know by region. So there's one for like the Southeast, there's one for the latest one's the Midwest. And so like that idea of like these 10 trumpet players might live literally 100 miles from you and you never have heard of them, but why not? And so
That's great.
I try very strategically not to be like, oh, well, this is the best trumpet, number one, number two. No, like these are great, phenomenal trumpet players. They look like you. They look like your cousin, your sister. Like they are amazing. They're right down the street. You can actually see them play if you know them. And so like via that channel, like I'm trying to make sure that like across the country, people have the ability to like know about 10 trumpet players that are close by. And then if you learn about those 10, you can learn about another 10 in another region. If you're looking at a school there, like, and all these people represent these different organizations that they are part of that you can benefit from. So anyway, I'm sorry, I might have thought about something, but I got really excited. I was like, oh yeah, 10 trumpet players you should know. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, there you go.
And if I have to add, I love all the trumpet pages like on Facebook. Speaking about these pages, but one issue I have is when a young player posts and asks for advice, you get 40 different comments by maybe I would go ahead and say it, mediocre trumpet players telling them, yes, do this for 2 hours, no, do something else for 20 minutes. And then Sean Jones gets in there, but his comment gets swallowed amongst 40 folks, and they don't even know it was there. Oh, to do what he said, but it just got swallowed in there. So we want to make sure that everybody gets certified. Like shot that comment gets pinned at the top. Or whatnot. Exactly. Just trying to focus this a lot better. All right, I'm out.
Don't leave.
You asked about groups. I'm not a part of any like social media-ish group. However, I'll tell you, every one of the musical ensembles I've played in, I have learned a lot. I mean, you come down here. I hate to say it, but you should. No, I don't hate to say it. I mean, you should just forget everything that you think you know about the music that's happening in the city, because it's on a whole nother level. And the beautiful thing about like what Ricio is doing is the thing in the regions, man. I remember I moved down here and I heard Ashland, and then I heard a cat named Andrew Bayham, and I was like, how have I been 5 hours away? And these guys, I mean, their name never crossed the airwaves. And you get down here, you hear them, and you like, what? Excuse me. Or everyone knows about Trombone Shorty, but unless you're in a certain scene, you do not know who Big Sam is. And it's like, man, you hear Big Sam play first, you're going to hear him play trombone. Like, there's no way you're not like, you're in the city, he's playing, it's gonna reach your ears at some point. But it's just like down here, you should just come down here. If anyone is going to watch this or watching it right now and thinking, all right, I'm going to move down to New Orleans, just go ahead and in your mind, all the stuff that you think just put it in the back of your mind, keep it there, because you're going to get filled with a lot of information. I mean, playing with Delphio's big band is one thing, and then playing with New Orleans Jazz Orchestra is another thing, and you're learning from all of these different people who've been here for 10 plus years, or some people who grew up here who are going to tell you about when James Black wrote this actual tune and blah, 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 blah. And this was the vibe. This is why you do this. I mean, it really, and I've been in quite a few scenes, but this is kind of second to none, because you don't get this everywhere at all.
Yeah, you got players in New Orleans definitely gonna put you on game. Like this trombone player, Terrence Taplin, right? He leads. He's like the musical director, I guess you can say, of the Duffield Marsalis and Uptown Jazz Orchestra. He leads the band when Delphio's not there, and he kind of gets all the cats together and calls people to see if they're available to play or rehearse and things like that. So it's like one of those things where if you're coming to New Orleans and you wanna play, or you wanna hang, you definitely helps to know anybody in New Orleans who is on the scene. But you either hit up Terrence Taplin, or you hit up Ashland, or you hit up, you know what I mean? You just hit up the cats. And for example, Terrence Taplin was the guy who actually I was like 13, 14, and he was the first guy he was the guy who first invited me to play to play in the band, to play in the Uptown Jazz Orchestra, like as a gig, not just as a kid sitting in. Um, so it was one of those things where, you know, people are listening and looking for players and definitely trying to hear you. So just put it out there. I mean, just put it out, put your effort. No pun intended. Actually, all pun intended. Um, you know, and show them what you got, but also, be humble and try to, take in what the city is all about as well.
Yeah, it's kind of refreshing. Like in so many the other meetups that we had in the different cities, there's at some point the discussion came up about social media. Like, what do you follow? What do you need to have a major face on? And I feel like in New Orleans, you don't need to have a major face in social media. You need to have a major. You need to be present as much as you can in the scene. And the older members of some of like LA and New York, that's still where they're at. They're like, no, you just got to show up. You got to be there. But like for the youth, it's not that way anymore. And I feel like it's a little sad in some ways. It's refreshing to hear that that's still, that's the way to do it in New Orleans. You show up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that happened for me. I mean, I kind of did. I try to get a full range, or get as much as I could out of everyone here that I know. Like Ashwin was saying earlier, I mean, when he saw me at a young age in Jackson Square, and I was playing with a lot of the brass band guys and learning a lot of New Orleans music. And Big Sam was actually he lived with me during in my family during Katrina, so that he was my inspiration for playing music. Um, so it's a weird connection. It's strange how we're all here together, because there's like one thing that happened that brought us all together in the end. It tied everyone together. It's weird. That's what New Orleans does, I feel like. And yeah, like I played in Del Fio's band for a while. I was playing with Riccio and Jeff. Um, I played, Jesse McBride had a big band too as well. Played with Nojo, and Ashland plays in that band as well. It's another big band. TJ does sometimes too. We all, in different ways, we come together in different settings, in different configurations. That's the cool thing about New Orleans. So you could play a funk gig one night, or like Ashland said, you could play 9 gigs in one night, or play with 9 or 10 different people. And for me, growing up, it was never I'm playing jazz or I'm playing bebop or I'm playing pop or rock. It's just music. Uh, one of the people we all look up to, Nicholas Payton, kind of has the BAM trend going. Even though Max Roach and all those guys were saying, kind of speaking on it early on, but he kind of came up with the thing. Okay, hashtag Black American music, instead of calling it jazz or this or whatever. It's all just music, and that's the source that it came from, Black culture. So that's huge here. I think people need to understand that too. When you come here, you're going to learn a lot. You're going to learn a lot of different types of music, and the more you know, the more people you can play with, and the more opportunity you have when you get outside of the city. I feel like everyone from here and that moves here, you got to get a sense of pride coming from here, just because there's so much richness and so much history and so much legacy and so many mentors alive and that have passed, and that's one of the things Ashland's doing moving forward. He was in Ellis's band for years, so he can take all the things he learned from him or whoever else he played with. That's how it gets passed down through everybody. It's like all the people you were with in that time period, it's really important to get what they have to say and to soak all that up in that moment, because it's like, even if you don't want to be a teacher, even if you don't see yourself doing that, when you're with all these guys, you're going to want to give back, and you're going to want to be like, okay, if I see another person that's that hungry and that really wants it, why not? It feels almost effortless. It's just like a seamless transaction of information. So I think that's the special thing about being here.
Yeah, and I just want to highlight also that there is so much music in like terms of genres happening here. Like I know a lot of people when they think New Orleans, they immediately think of a second line or what you see at Preservation Hall, but
Or
there's
bounce
so
music.
much other stuff happening. Like there is a lot, and I tell people New Orleans has almost every type of music that you want to do on a professional level. someone down here is doing it, and there is some type of market for it. So that's for anybody that's thinking about moving here. Was like, yo, man, I kind of want to do the jam band stuff. That's here. I kind of want to do the rock stuff. That's here in its own fashion. All of it's here, but all of them, the things that we talked about like the quote unquote paying your dues, that is all similar across the board. Like, doesn't matter which scene you're trying to get in here, you're gonna have to do that in some way, shape, form, or fashion. But I just wanted to highlight that because um, I know when I talk to a lot of kids, and I mentioned New Orleans, like, oh, well, I'm really kind of into like the R&B stuff, and I'm like, okay, you should also look here then. It's not like it ain't just happening in LA. It's not just happening in Chicago. Like, and I'm an advocate for down here also. I'm a Southern boy in general. So to find a place that has a lot of these things and I don't have to worry about uh, if I need to put salt on the ground and stuff like that is definitely a plus.
Yes. Speaking of someone living in a couple inches of snow right now. Well, we're getting close to the end here of our time. Attendees that are here, if you have any questions, feel free to. Oh, there is a question and answer that I missed here. Caleb wants to know, what was your greatest challenge coming up in New Orleans? Which is a good question. We've talked a lot about a lot of the joys and the wins of New Orleans, but what was your greatest challenge?
I'll give you mine. Mine was in 2008 during the recession. And the power, I had the power out for maybe 3 months. But we figured out how to heat up the house by steaming up the shower. And then that would just get you warm enough to go to sleep, but then you'd wake up wet and cold. So, but it was, you had to pick your battle. And I was almost through that winter when I got a call for a recording session. Actually, I got a call to go to do a rehearsal. And when I went to the rehearsal for big band, they had mics set up everywhere. And I was like, this doesn't look like a rehearsal. And it wasn't. It was a recording. And so I was sight reading on that record. And it ended up winning a Grammy with the New Orleans Jazz Orchestra. So that was the hardest it got for me, and it worked out. It worked out. Yeah.
I would say.
No.
There we go.
Yeah.
I think, hopefully. All right, cool. I would say there's a couple things because I think, I moved away for college. So I would say, when I was, more living in New Orleans, I think, or when I was living full time in the city, I think the biggest thing for me was juggling school and playing because I was playing professionally by the time I was in high school. So definitely juggling that. But luckily, if I feel like compared to any other city, the teachers that I had, most of them were understanding of the situation that I was in, um, and a good bit of them actually ended up coming to my gigs, and I would have their class the next day. So it was, that situation was cool, but there were definitely challenges, especially when I first started in high school and started having to juggle that, as well as outside of the music thing, you know I've definitely lost friends, you know what I mean, from violence and the more negative aspects of the city that, tend to swallow our youth up, unfortunately. So I've definitely lost friends to a lot of the senseless violence that happens down here. Not to make it too negative, but I mean the question is about is about challenges. So that definitely makes it, emotionally and spiritually trying at times, just having to deal with that. but you end up turning that into motivation, and and trying to turn your life into something that's um worth living. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I would say those two things.
Yeah, I would agree with a lot of what Jeff said as well. Because I dealt with a lot of that too. I mean, I knew a lot of guys I grew up playing with that aren't here anymore. Wrong place, right, wrong time, and bad situations and negative situations. Great people, but just got caught up in a lot of the violence and negativity that comes with the city. But it's also something that saves a lot of people, which is another good thing. I know Shamar Allen, one of the programs I was in with him was Stop the Violence, Trumpet Not Guns, all these different things that promoted, giving kids instruments to stop violence.
Music, yeah.
Yeah, Roots to Music. Mm-hmm. A lot of programs are set up. I'll say nowadays, I mean, I don't know of all the programs that are happening. I know there are still some, but I just feel so blessed to be a part of so many, that I was a part of so many. And now it kind of seems like there's not as many. I'm sure there are some, but 10 years ago, it was like a lot happened. And there was a Tina's Foundation I was with, Donald Harrison. That's not even a thing anymore. In fact, Tina's almost closed down completely until Galactic bought it. So I say one of the toughest things is what Jeff said, and then just losing certain places, losing certain people that you grew up knowing.
Yeah, and that's just if anything, you use that, you use those challenges to those challenges could either make you or break you. You could, those things can break you down and sort of, make you realize that, may take that drive from you, or they could build you up stronger and make you realize why you really want to, be a musician or be an artist, or, do what you want to do, or do what you feel like you're called to do. And so, I think that's, it's a double-edged sword in that way, I think. No, yeah.
Caleb, bro, when you gonna call me for a lesson, bro?
Caleb and Melvin. Melvin's a bad boy. He said this weekend.
Oh, you're muted. You're muted. If you're saying something.
Mary.
Oh,
Sorry, there we go. Thank you. I was just pointing in the chat that Caleb had gotten back to you. Caleb and Melvin, thanks so much for showing up. I think we'll end the last question with Mardi Gras, which is coming up. Is it a headache, or is it something you guys look forward to at this point? What's life like during the week leading up to Mardi Gras? And
it's canceled.
It's canceled. Well, okay, it's canceled.
It's my birthday.
No,
usually a lot of gigs and a lot of headaches. Yardi Gras.
Yardi Gras. It's Yardi Gras. It's cool though. They're dressing up their houses like floats.
Yeah.
So, you can just walk around and just
I did that last weekend. We were actually on Inside Edition. They came by and did a little, put us on the news.
Nice.
But it was weird. I was like, these houses, they all look the same. It's like these big, it's almost like the house is afloat. It's weird. It's cool though. And there are so many people out. Like, I think earlier in the chat, we were talking about how people really want the music now. There's people tip. I was like, I'm going to pass this tip jar as far as I can, not get too close to people, but, people are wanting to give. So that's cool.
Mardi Gras.
I think I will. What's up, Jeff?
What I was just gonna say, it's funny. This year, Mardi Gras is on my grandmother's birthday on the 16th of February, which is a week after my birthday. So I'm like, it's kind of it's lit,
Well, happy early birthday!
Yeah.
Birthday
Thanks.
coming up.
5.
Woo. Nice.
Old.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, and I'm gonna bring up the story, and as soon as I say these words, these cats are gonna be like, oh man, this time of year is like when some of the questions we have to ask ourselves that really, really test your character as a musician, as a skilled professional trumpet player or trombone player, is when you get called for 5 gigs in one day, and 3 of them might be an hour. The other 2 might be 2 or 3 hours long. Like as a trumpet player and a trombone player, what do you do when you know you got to play 9 hours of like really good trumpet?
Yeah.
And you got to play it in the way that's like, you know, what people expect in this city, you know what I'm saying? Like, so yeah, I mean, it's a headache in that regard, but it's also beautiful because like you learn
It's like
who
conditioning.
you learn who you are in that moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's hard, but it's hard, especially when you're like in each of those gigs and you're like in the moment. You know what I mean? It's like, you know, you shouldn't be going hard, but like everybody else around you only has like that gig that day, so they're going hard, and you're like, damn, I don't want to be the only one not going hard. And then so you go hard, and then by gig 9, you're like, you know, other people are like, you know, they've only had like another gig that day, and so that's their last gig, and that's your last gig, but you've been playing all day, so it's like you can't. It's a whole thing. Yeah.
That's
and then when you're doing a parade, you got a new audience every block. Like that's a new crowd. That's like, hey, what you got? What you got? And, you know, you got to give them what you know, you got to give it to them, you know? Yep. And so every block you're playing at a new club, you know? It's like, it's crazy.
Oh.
Yeah, Reese. Yeah, yep.
My face is hurting just listening to this.
Me too. I was literally, as soon as he started asking that question, I was like, come on. Like, I
can feel it. I can feel it.
Yeah. John Michael and I did a gig, a live stream gig. And when we got there, I was like, bruh, I don't know what I was thinking. I had all the lessons today, and 3 of my students were asking about range building stuff. So I was like, showing them, yeah, we're going to start here, but this is where you'll be able to get, forgetting all about the gig. And that second song came around, and I was in the moment. I tried to go for it. It was like, oh yeah, they
maybe not yet.
Yeah.
It's a conditioning though. It's like you get Jazz Fest time, you get French Quarter Fest, you get all these times in the year where you're like, okay, I gotta really play for like, I'm at 20 gigs in 2 days.
It's like the Olympics or something, you know?
Yeah. Not everybody could keep up with it. You got to be in it for a minute to like get adjusted.
Facts.
Yeah, you learn. I mean, I've had a couple playing experiences like that, which would happen year after year. And the first couple of years, you just wind up flat on your face. But then you start learning, oh yeah, you can practice for endurance. And all of a sudden, like for me, those instances were the defining between what my practice was and what endurance practice was. Because like I never really thought about practicing for endurance or like to push myself in a certain way for a specific job. But then I also realized that all the practicing I was doing was kind of endurance practicing and not focused enough in certain ways. So like those humiliating experiences of finding your lips on the floor are so instructive. But
see, during Jazz Fest, I played this gig at the Spotted Cat that starts at 10:30 at p on Sundays, and so on the final Sunday, and we've been doing that gig every Sunday for the last 13 years, you know. And on the last Sunday, that's kind of the last gig that's happening everywhere, you know, like it's like so everybody kind of ends up there at some point. And back in the day, we used to just kind of close when everybody left. And sometimes that was daylight, you know. And all the New York trumpet players or all the people that were visiting, they would come sit in, because everyone always sits in. They'd come in and sit in around 2 a.m. because they know I'm tired by then. And that's when they're going to try to come pipe me, you know. So I've learned endurance pretty much from that gig, you know, but having to learn not to overspread is probably the biggest thing about playing loud, you know.
Yeah.
You know, TJ, what you gonna say? Oh yeah, because you know, overspreading that's what people think that's what's happening when you're playing loud. But you know, you do that for 5 minutes, you can be done. You know,
yeah.
and we've got like you said, a 4-hour gig, then another hour, then another hour, and then another 3 or 4 hour on top of that. You know, that's a good Friday. You know,
Yeah.
that's a good Friday or Saturday. You know, so you got to pace yourself and also, you know, try not to overspread. What did he say?
They should make a pill for super lips for musicians.
You got the Robinsons. The Robinsons formula is nice. You know,
Lip renew helps. That's a good
that's
one.
what that is. That's the lip renew. You know.
Yeah. Sean introduced me to that. That's a nice one. Yeah. Icing too. Icing if you playing hard.
But also warming up and not overspreading. You know what I mean? Like, you know, warming up really soft. If you're gonna play a really loud gig, that means you got to warm up that much more softer. You know what I mean? And really deal with the threshold. You know, playing loud can really hurt you. You know.
Yeah. Actually. Also. Yeah.
Yeah. Warming down as well as warming up.
The Denis Wick practice mute, it's right above my head, the black one. That one actually, every single time I've blown my aperture out by too much heavy playing or whatever, you know, on tour where you had, you know, played the whole day and then had an early morning hit the next morning for a news program or something. That practice mute actually puts everything back in balance. Like if you warm up for about 10 minutes on it, it's the back pressure on it isn't too hard, but it puts everything back in place. I don't know how it does it, but it does. So that's always been a good one for me to just kind of get everything back focused again. Because once you lose the focus, then you're just going to smash your face to find it somewhere else. So,
download the Denis Wick app.
Download the Denis Wick app. Yep. Lots of great information, lots of good advice on that for all sorts of playing and playing issues. I wish we could go on for another couple hours. We'll just have to do this again sometime. And stay in touch if you ever need anything Denis Wick. That goes for all of our panelists. Stay in contact. Ashton, you probably don't know my email, but you know plenty of people here who do. So, and Caleb and Melvin and to all our other attendees who came today, thank you so much for hanging out with us. This has been a lot of fun, and man, it just makes me want to make a pilgrimage out to New Orleans as soon as I get vaccinated.
Come through.
Let us know now. If we run into you, we're gonna be mad. So give us some warning. Give me so we can take care of you.
You know, I need to get in touch with Big Sam. I think he plays on a heritage Denis Wick mouthpiece, doesn't he?
He does.
He does, and he's done a good job tagging us on social media.
And he's picky with what he likes to use too. I know.
Facts, yeah.
But,
so I know he likes that.
I got to reach out to him. I will reach out to him. That's cool. I feel like I got to know him a little better in this webinar. Oh, yeah. So if I don't see you guys virtually sometime soon, hope to see you in New Orleans sometime soon, eating some good food and listening to some good music. If anybody has any other questions or wants to continue the conversation, join Team Denis Wick Facebook group. And most of our artists are signed up there, so you can ask anybody questions and get some answers. And also download the Denis Wick app. It's another great way to stay in touch. So otherwise, stay safe. Have an excellent weekend. Have a safe Mardi Gras. Hope to see you soon. Good night.
Later.
Bye-bye.